Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's P&G Alumni Network Enrichment Series webinars. This is your host, Ileana Rojas, and I hope you're all safe and well. I'm very excited for our guest today, Kay Koplovitz, who will share with us her story and lessons learned to energize and drive the next innovations. Without further ado, let me introduce you to Kay. And to do that, I'm going to show a video. It's important that to hear the video, you must use your computer volume in case you are joining us through the phone. So let me show the video first.
I love the imagination of science fiction. The fact that anything you could possibly dream of can happen.
Kay is a visionary.
Aggressive in her thinking.
She's bold.
She's a trailblazer.
Her vision is so tremendous.
A pioneer.
A role model.
Kay is authentic.
She's not interested in talking. She's interested in action.
It may be difficult for you to imagine the television landscape in 1968. The television industry boasted 3 television networks and really nothing else.
The most fascinating thing about Kay Koplovitz is her journey, which basically had its start in the 60s. She happens to meet up with Arthur C. Clarke.
The incredible breakthrough which has been made possible by developments of the communications satellite.
He was so excited about geosynchronous orbiting satellites because he knew that they had the power to change the course of communications.
And that was an idea that would never let me go. So I diverted my track and went into satellites.
They want to see me and Joe Frazier.
I wonder if anybody in this room knows what happened September 30th, 1975.
The Thriller in Manila.
We brought it live via satellite from Manila into Vero Beach, Florida. And that was the night that changed the course of television history and launched my career.
In 1979, the forerunner of USA Network made a deal with the NBA.
I went out and got television rights for major sports.
USA Cable Network, sports every weeknight.
For us, it was a prime time window.
We collected a fee from the cable operators and created the 2 revenue streams that make all these program networks so successful today.
It was the beginning of the cable advertising industry, which is, as you know, pretty darn substantial.
She was pushing the envelope and taking it out to the cable operators as a new network.
We are the first to do 24 original movies a year. We're the first to buy big original series.
She believed in marrying the programming with the advertising.
We launched SyFy in 1992. I did it in some ways to pay homage to Arthur C. Clarke. It was a wonderful ride.
In 1997, President Bill Clinton appointed her to be the chairman of the National Women's Business Council.
I saw all this money pouring over the transom, over $100 billion in venture capital, and only 1.7% was going to women.
And I said, somebody's got to change the picture on this poster.
And that was really the genesis of Springboard.
So many businesses, from iRobot to Constant Contact, are all Springboard companies.
It is a wonderful thing to be able to take my 40 years of experience and share it with others.
An entrepreneur is somebody who's always looking at the future. Kay has no rear view mirror.
She's an inspiration, a mentor. Kay, I'm honored to know you.
So congratulations to Kay Koplovitz for starting it all.
The only thing we can be sure of about the future is that it will be absolutely fantastic.
I wake up every single day and I see nothing but possibilities.
That was like, what can I say, Kate? Thank you so much for being here with us today. You have such an inspiring story with so many accomplishments and an incredible impact in so many areas that, I feel like we could talk for hours and hours. But however, I think we should start from the beginning. And I would love for you to share with us, what was your path to becoming the founder of USA Networks? And if this was your dream, or how did it come about?
Well, I think the video really sort of highlighted the story, and I'm a really big believer in the serendipitous moments in life. And meeting up with Arthur C. Clarke as a student between my junior and senior year in college at the University of Wisconsin, I took a trip to Europe, backpack and, $5 a day, kind of scraping my way through Europe. And I happened to wander into a lecture. I saw a poster that was for geosynchronous orbiting satellites. And I thought to myself, oh my God, that could be really fantastic. I think I'll go here and listen to this. And I walked in and I heard this amazing talk about the power of satellites. And it was a time when, as I said in the video, there really wasn't anything else but 3 broadcast networks. And nothing was going on that we have today, not 500,000 cable networks and streaming and all these sorts of, none of it existed. And it was a barren landscape. And that idea that you could communicate around the globe with only 3 satellites instantaneously was so powerful that when I left that lecture, it was an idea that would never let me go. And that's why I really started to concentrate on satellites. And I graduated from college, went on to write a master's thesis on satellite technology in 1968, really talking about the power it had for communications. And it really defined my career. Now, you have to be in the market when the market's ready for you. 1968, the market was not ready for the satellite introduction. It was there, it was operating mostly by governments, but it wasn't ready for commercial use in the market. It took 7 years, 7 long years to get that to market. And as the video points out, it was September 30th, 1975, the Thriller from Manila. And I was representing home box office at that time as a client. And with my background in satellite communications, I had worked at the Communications Satellite Corporation. And I really, was passionate about the use of satellites, knew it would change the industry if we could introduce satellites into the cable industry, which was so distributed to more rural and outlying areas in the country. But unless there was some new programming, something different, it really wasn't going to grow. So that was the moment that really did change the course of television history, bringing that heavyweight boxing match, still today rated the #1 of all time, into Vero Beach, Florida, and show not only congressmen and senators, but people in the industry that this was a powerful technology that could change our viewing habits and really bring value to the home. So that was really, to me, the serendipitous moment. If I had not wandered into that lecture as a curious student, I never would have done this. It never would have happened. Not happened for me anyway. So I have to say, always be aware of these things that come from out of nowhere into your life, and recognize the serendipitous moments that you can really move forward with. But let me go forward a little bit, because I think there are there are thousands of lessons and thousands of stories that could be told. But let me tell one about thinking fast and slow. I think probably most of the people on this call have read the book about thinking fast and slow, or slow. And it happened when I had negotiated a contract with the Yankees in 1978. I'd negotiated a contract with the Yankees to carry their baseball games across the country, still to a very nascent growing cable industry, not in major cities too much at that time. And I got a contract pretty easily negotiated with him. I knew what I could pay for it. He was delighted to get his games out across the country. But of course, this was George Steinbrenner. And for those who don't know, George was always pushing the envelope. So first game came up in April of 1979, the Yankees against the Red Sox, a traditional rivalry, and it went to extra innings. I mean, you could not ask for a better game to start this whole series that I had just sold into the cable industry. And the next morning, I get a call from the commissioner, Bowie Kuhn, commissioner of Major League Baseball. Ms. Koplovitz, he said to me, I see you televised this game last night. Yeah, I did. It was I'm so excited. And he said, yeah, I'm calling to tell you didn't have the right to televise it. What? I said, I have this contract right on my desk here signed by George Steinbrenner. He said, yes, well, that's the problem, Ms. Koplovitz. He didn't have the right to sell it to you. And so the regulation inside, regulation inside baseball was that a baseball team couldn't telecast its games into some other team's territory. And there were a few little around the fringes that this broke the rule. And he said that if you don't stop, I'm going to take you to court and get a restraining order immediately. Immediately. I just sold it into my customers. I thought to myself, holy cow. Well, look, this is going to be great for baseball. I tried to talk him into it. You know how entrepreneurs are, we're just so enthusiastic about what we're doing. He was not buying it. And I said, I'll call you back. I just didn't really know what to do at that moment. I went down the hall. My husband's a communications lawyer. He worked in this company that I had previously worked for, and my offices were in the next building. And I told him his story, and he said, well, okay, I got to tell you something. He's probably going to, he'll take you to court and he'll win. And besides, you don't have the money to even go to court and challenge him. And I said, yep, that's true. I went back to my office, kind of angry with my husband for telling me that I didn't, is not what I wanted to hear. And went back to my office, and I thought there for a moment, and I called him. And I was still trying to convince him this would be fantastic. Nothing. He was like a wall, not buying it, complete silence. So I stopped. And I was thinking to myself, what do I really want? I want a contract with Major League Baseball. So I said to him, I'll trade you. Silence. I waited. Trade me what? He said. I said, I'll trade you my contract with the Yankees for a contract with Major League Baseball. Silence. I waited. I'll see you in my office tomorrow morning, Ms. Koplovitz. And that's how I traded a worthless Yankee contract for a contract with Major League Baseball. And it's thinking fast and slow. Fast because I had to react. Then thinking, what is the value long term? And it really was the contract with Major League Baseball. So sometimes we have to force ourselves to think both fast and slow. But I think there are other things that I ran into at that time that are different than today, but still there are some similarities, breaking barriers. And it kind of reminds me of a very, let's say, I think a fascinating story about the Masters in Augusta National Tournament, which I'm sure many people on this call watch every year, perhaps attend. It was 1982, and I had just negotiated the contract to carry on Thursday and Friday, the first 2 days of Augusta National, and did this along with CBS that had the weekend rights, and they were amenable to this. And so we had a three-way conversation, a three-way contract, and I was down there for my first event, April 1982. And we are standing out in front. Now, this was media day, lunch day. That's Thursday at Augusta, always. So we're standing outside the clubhouse on the veranda talking, and Ford Hardin, who was the chairman at the time, said, okay, time to go to lunch. Let's go inside. And I'm talking to him, and we're going into the clubhouse, and we're going up the stairs. And we get to the top of the stairs, and he turns around, and he says to me, okay, we don't allow women on the second floor. And I said to him, well, Ford, what are we going to do about it? Because it wasn't really my problem. It was really his problem. And he was smart enough to say, I think we'll have lunch in the trophy room where women were allowed, and where we had lunch for the next 10 years until they actually allowed women to eat lunch on the second floor in 1992. So, it is, you have to figure out a way to get around barriers. I had lots of them. There was a time when women weren't even allowed in golf clubs. They weren't allowed in eating clubs that were often met, and it was eliminating us from the conversation around business. But you had to figure out your way around it. And I think today there are other types of barriers, but maybe oftentimes they're more subtle, because a lot of these restrictions that I faced have been removed from the marketplace ostensibly, but the culture hasn't always changed. And we have found in working with entrepreneurs and looking at the landscape of what is available to them in terms of access to market, access to capital, it's still quite a bit of a challenge. And that's because of the culture, I think, that we're faced with today. So I think when those of you who are entrepreneurs, or those of you who are mentors or investors, connectors, you have the power to change this. And that's really what I want to talk to you about today, because it is really what we found out back in 1998 when President Clinton asked me to chair the National Women's Business Council, which is a non-profit, it's not a profitable or a paying position. It's really just leading this group. And your main purpose actually was to report to Congress on the advancement of women-led businesses, particularly procurement with the federal government. It didn't really float my boat, to tell you the truth. I thought, well, just reporting, that's not going to do too much here. If I can get him to say, okay, you can use that, what would you use it for? And I said, we've got to get women access to private capital, equity capital. And when I said that to him, I said, look, I'll be happy to do this, but this is what I want to use the platform for. He said, that's fine, as long as you report to Congress and, do what you're supposed to do with regard to the position, that would be perfect. That'd be fine. So off we went in 1999 to Silicon Valley. And I said, well, why not Silicon Valley? It's where all the money is, Why do people rob banks? That's where the money is. So off we went. And a few people, a handful of people that I knew, I was on the board of Oracle back then, so I knew some people. I didn't know anything really very much about venture capital. But fortunately, I had a few friends who worked in the industry. And we decided that the only way we would find out if women were capable of raising capital was to go out and find them, train them, hopefully, on how to raise capital, what the gates are, what term sheets are, how you have to present your finances, all these sorts of things, and present them and see what happens. Well, the first class was in January 2000. 26 of the 350 applications that we got in technology and life sciences from women founders. 26 companies, 26 entrepreneurs presented that day. 22 got funded. 2 others merged their business. 1 woman sold her business, and 1 wasn't funded. And we were never going to go back because we uncovered what the secret was, that we had to have the ecosystem, the entire ecosystem really needed to be built. And what did we mean by that? The ecosystem is not only entrepreneurs and investors, it's lawyers, it's accountants, it's business associates, it's connectors, it's the entire ecosystem that needs to be used and built. And that is the pathway to raising capital. So when we look at this chart and you see, really all the elements of the ecosystem that we're building, it's why I say that those of you on this call have a role. Where is your role in this ecosystem? But you really can power entrepreneurs, whether they're women or men, whether they're disadvantaged entrepreneurs, it doesn't really matter. They all have to have this ecosystem. So it's not only today's social capital, like who can I connect to, the human resources that you need, who has the expertise that I need, the venture capitalists who actually, or others, angels, venture capitalists that can put money into my company. They want to invest in what I want to do, but you also need the lawyers. You need to have the proper legal terms in place, the experts on your topic. The whole ecosystem is what I call the human capital ecosystem. And let me give you a little example of how this ecosystem works. In 2009, we had, for Springboard Enterprises, let me tell you a little bit about Springboard. Springboard is a nonprofit accelerator, probably without doubt the biggest one that I've ever encountered in the world. It is global, 835 entrepreneurs so far, more companies because many are serial entrepreneurs. But let me tell you a story about how that ecosystem works first. 2009, we had a number of screenings. We pulled together the applications. We have a screening process. The screening process is very important. And people with feet on the ground really know what's being funded, really know the category. And we were doing companies in the life sciences. And one woman who made a presentation, and I happened to be in her screening room, so I remember it very vividly. She was talking about a treatment for autism. And autism speaks had already been launched. There was a lot of controversy about whether autism was caused by vaccines, how it was inherited. People were all over the map on it. She said, actually, it's a cognitive disease, and what people digest has an effect on them. And we were fortunate that there were two of our resources, our advisors were microbiologists. And they said, look, what she's saying, what you eat, we all knew what we ate affected our physical health. At that point in time, people didn't really focus on what you eat affects your mental capacity in the same way. And she was saying, yes, it does. And I can, this is what I'm working on, and this is what my company has shown in clinical trials. And these two microbiologists said, look, it's unconventional. What she's saying, very unconventional. There would be a lot of pushback, but we believe there's something here. So we admitted her into that class of 2009. Another entrepreneur presenting in the same class, this woman's name was Joan Fallon. Another woman, Heather Potters, in the same screening room, in the same class with her, was working on the needle-free injector. PharmaJet's the name of that company. And she said to Joan, look, I have an investor from the UK who I think is really going to like what you're talking about. I'm going to introduce you to him. And that man actually became their single largest individual investor until recent years, when raising bigger funds came into play for both of them. But then one of our advisors in San Francisco knew someone who had fast-tracked product through the FDA, and she connected Joan to that person, and that person helped her fast-track this treatment through 3 clinical trials. That company's name is Curemark. They're about to come to market with that product, and as you know, in that drug development category, it takes many years to get to market. But she still is one of the, now regarded as one of the forward innovators, the most innovative of them in this category in the treatment for autism, and the only one in the marketplace that has proven through a wide variety of sources. So this is how the ecosystem works. I give this as an example of what I think is so relevant for people to understand, that it isn't just entrepreneurs and investors, it isn't just that one connection, it's these many connections that take companies to scale. So you might ask yourself, well, let me say a little bit about Springboard for those of you who don't know what it is. It is a nonprofit accelerator for women founders in technology and life sciences. We are very international. We have companies, as you see from the chart, from all over the world, really. And our ability to connect them. If you have a company and you start it in Australia, it's a big country with a small population. If you want to have a world-class product, you have to export. You have to get out of your country and onto the global scale. And we excel on our more than, I think, close to 80 entrepreneurs now out of Australia. Some of them very top performing, like Melanie Perkins' Canva, which is a design product for designing presentations and cards and all kinds of posters and marketing materials. I'm sure some of you use her product. It's now valued at $15 billion privately in the market, and one of the biggest that has come out of Springboard. But she's entered the world, 170 some countries around the world, and I think that there is this connection is so important. Were these companies at Springboard? What kind of, we're in different sectors of the economy, pretty heavy in life sciences, enterprise tech, media communications, consumer tech and products. We'll talk a little bit more about that, e-commerce, and many others, AR, VR, cybersecurity, blockchain, etc. Women are in all these different categories. So when we started 21 years ago, the concept was women couldn't do this. Women wouldn't do this. They were just going to do small lifestyle companies, which is nothing wrong with that, but that's not what we do. We look for and support companies that are in high growth in technology and life sciences. So, it's really been wonderful. The results of what we've done over 21 years, I think, speaks for itself. I won't linger on this, but just to give you an idea of the 835 companies, 89% of them raised capital, over $27 billion in value has been created, 22 IPOs. It is really an amazing, strong group. And this is what your group can be for entrepreneurs and mentors and board members within your community as well. You really can make these connections and you can empower. Let me give you an example of how we do this on the global scale, because I think it's always interesting to hear a real example. And I'm going to talk about Deb Noller, who is out of Australia. She's a tech entrepreneur, and her company is called Switch Automation. And she came to the United States first. And what her company does is it combines the different elements and buildings within a city or within a complex, like an industrial complex, and rates the carbon impact of all those and looks for ways to reduce the carbon impact among the buildings. So she did a pilot program with the city of Seattle. That was all the buildings run and operated by the city of Seattle, and proved that by using her software, she could combine what was being used and look for waste within the city and reduce their carbon footprint, increase their capacity to deliver energy to these buildings, not only electric, but water, etc. And so that was her pilot. And it was very successful. That was a number of years ago. Then she decided to come and open her office in the United States. Well, she really didn't understand all of the elements that had to be cleared for her company to come and register as a U.S. company. She got maybe a little bit of ill advice and made some serious mistakes, had to go back kind of painfully and correct them. A few years later, another one of our Australian companies wanted to come to the United States. And Deb said, let me show you how to do it. And she took her step by step through what to do, the correct way to do it, and the most efficient way to do it, and the getting here with the smallest amount of time dedicated to it. It was really efficient. So she was willing to share her mistakes and her corrections of them, have really made a big difference for one of her colleague companies. So this is how this culture of really helping within this ecosystem really pays off for companies. So that's really the story of Springboard. But what I really want to use it as an example is to say that your group is a nonprofit, we're a nonprofit, but we can have an immense impact on people in our ecosystem. So, for example, I told you the story of Joan Fallon and Curemark. Well, let me finish that story for you today, because today, Joan Fallon is a board member of Springboard Enterprises, and one of our other board members has joined her board. So, and that is Lee Morgan. She has big experience in the biotech industry. This is a fabulous, I call it the circular economy of Springboard, but it could be the same for you as you build out, you all think about what are your what's your expertise? What would you like to do? What is your appetite to participate in innovation? Because we are at the actual takeoff point of innovation. We've seen it bubbling along. We've seen the impact of artificial intelligence, of blockchain. It's not just the technology companies, as you know. being in the consumer products industry, how it is changing, how e-commerce is changing, how we shop, how I think biotechnology is changing the beauty market, for example. It is really amazing. One of the companies that my partners and I, who have an investment firm, invested in is called Aquas. That company started off with really a hair turban to dry your hair very quickly. Now, if you're out there and you're a guy and don't have as much hair as women have, maybe you're not thinking that that's a great product, but for women, it's fantastic. It started by Britta Cox, who was from the ski industry and had all this wicking material. And she said, she had long hair, and she said, well, why can't I use this to dry my hair? And created the Aquas towel, which has an amazing run in market. But the other product is a protein-enriched product called K18 that goes into the hair follicles and actually strengthens the hair. It doesn't mask it, actually strengthens it. And you think about the changes that are coming in these different categories. Surely a lot of people on this call have go-to-market strategies in their DNA, can help companies like that company's doing very well. I just mentioned it just because I think it's in this category. And let me also say that at Springboard, we are collaborating with P&G Ventures in our dolphin tanks. What's a dolphin tank? It's not a shark tank. Let me tell you what a dolphin tank is. A dolphin tank is where we present, or companies present. It's a 1.5 day event or an evening event, usually. It's usually 3-4 hours. And we have 3 or 4 companies present on a specific subject. So we are currently working with P&G Ventures on a 3-part series for sustainability in the consumer product market. So it's really about food sourcing, it's about packaging, it's about supply chain, it's about a lot of things that are going on in the marketplace today for consumer products. And so this has really been, we did our first one, we have our second one coming up shortly with them, and we'll have a third one this year, all focused on sustainable products or processes in the marketplace that affect consumer products. So we're really, really pleased to be working with P&G Ventures on this, because we think the consumer, every market, I don't care if it's industrials, I don't care if it's tech, I don't care if it's fintech, I don't care if it's consumer. At Springboard, we also have New York Fashion Tech Lab, which is companies that's a technology behind retail. So it's all the fast-moving technology, including AR, VR, all kinds of supply chain payments, contactless payments, all these sorts of things. It's all driving the economy in a different direction, and people that are like yourselves, who are experts in this field of consumer, are really needed for the transformation of the industry. So we're so pleased to be working with P&G on that. And I wanted to say that, I'm also pleased to learn that P&G has earmarked some of their investment dollars and ventures behind women and other underfunded entrepreneurs in our economy. So, we're very grateful for that. And I think I want to leave you with the message that you hold the power to change this market in innovation within your hand. I hope you are active in it, because you can make a big difference. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So many great stories, Kay, that you shared with us today. And there are so many questions that are flowing in. You talked about, those serendipitous moments and how to be, keep an eye out for them, because you never know where they're going to take you. And you also talked about something that caught my attention about being ready when the market is ready for you, and how in one of the examples earlier you shared how it took 7 years, for the idea to come to fruition. And I think right now we're seeing a lot of that, where maybe there are all these, future ideas of what can be, but maybe the market might not be ready. How do you stay motivated as an entrepreneur to wait for, 5, 6, 7 years, especially when things are going now so fast that you might feel, that's it, I'm moving on and move away?
Well, I don't believe that the length will be, when I did it, the length was longer. I don't think it's as long. Now, if you're really futuristic, if you're working on flying cars, it may be a long path, but even we've seen with the COVID, we have like more than 24 companies working in aspects of COVID, including Everlywell, which was the first company to have at-home testing for the COVID. Julie Cheek moved very fast in that marketplace to really make it possible for people to get an at-home test for COVID. It's moving so fast. So I don't think that it's going to be that long. I think it's, the time is going to be shortened, but you do have to gauge. I'll give another example. In a company that I know well, Robin Chase, who was the co-founder of Zipcar, was always using mesh technology to integrate the stack of Wi-Fi, cellular, etc. And so another company that she's a founder of is called Venium. Venium is the Internet of moving things. It actually meshes together all different technologies on the move, in cars, in trucks, in plane. It can integrate. It's a very complex, but it actually works very well. And they went after that market. If you go to city of Porto, Portugal, where they are founded, the whole city is integrated. You can get videos in a moving car, on a bus, anything, no interruption. You don't even know that it's changing all these different points of intersection at all. And they started doing that. Then they moved on to the automobile industry when everybody was, moving towards automobiles having this technology inside the automobile. They have constant, and the automobile industry got stalled with COVID. And you say to yourself, well, they were in out of their market 10 years ago, and they moved into the automobile market. When COVID hit, they realized that the automobile industry is going to be pushed back. 2-3 years in there on their releasing cars from their plants. And so they moved back into the moving things and went into the trucking industry. And this ability for truckers and trucking industry now to have this instant total communication with on their fleets and selling into fleets was really, so here's a company that is 12 years old that has had to change direction a couple times along the way because the market changed on them. When you're an entrepreneur, you have to recognize if that market is changing or when it is ready. I once funded a company called Broadway Television Network in 2000, and it was using streaming, which was not available yet, but was in the prospects, and was first released on DVD. And DVDs were just coming into the market right then. And it was Broadway musicals, Dolby Sound. We did 5 of them. I was just a founder. I was an investor. I wasn't running a company or anything. And, showed them in movie theaters, and people loved them. And then 9/11 came, and Broadway collapsed. And for the next 2 years, you couldn't fund anything in Broadway. It was really difficult. And so it hit the market at the wrong time. And it was too early anyway, because really you had to go to DVDs before you got to streaming. But today, if you know anything about the Metropolitan Opera, then Metropolitan Opera goes live, to movie theaters around the world at like a 90% plus occupation in the movie theaters. It's amazing success. So, there was a company that was in the market too soon. And the market, complete change in the market really affected their ability to continue. Anyway, that's how you have to look at the market. Today, the markets are moving so much faster that you have to be prepared to shift on a dime, like Venium did. They shifted on a dime last March, and went into a new market they had never contemplated being in, and they're hitting the ball out of the park. So, that's an entrepreneur, and somebody who knows the market really can help them make that transition.
Awesome. What advice would you give to women who are trying to grow their business yet still want to stay profitable? And how can they play that VC game that seems to reward fast sales growth at any cost with no apparent regard to profitability?
Well, I think that most companies that are like service companies or lifestyle companies, small store owners, or maybe a smaller chain of restaurants, or have a craft and sell that craft on something like Etsy or whatever, and want to have a lifestyle company and want to be profitable. That's the right way to go. I mean, you have to be profitable, keep going. And you're building based on what you can create or sell. That's a very viable way of going about having a company. For what we do, we're more in the high growth tech sectors in science and technology, but that doesn't mean that that's the only viable way to go. And there are, I'm talking to a woman entrepreneur right now who started a company, really kind of an event making company, maybe half a dozen years or a little bit longer ago, has changed into podcasting. It's all been self-built, but she now realizes that growth in the next stage is going to need funding. So you get to the point where you say, I can keep growing this at this rate, profitable. By the way, USA was grown in that in that way before it was profitable, and I continued to make profits for many years, more than the studios in Hollywood, where my partners later on, Paramount and Universal, were making. And it was ultimately sold for $4.5 billion. When $4.5 billion was a lot of money, so maybe it still is. So there are different pathways, and you've got to decide. So what is your goal? Are you trying to build a world-class global company? Are you trying to build a very solid company based on earnings and profitability? They're all viable. It just depends on the path that you want to take. So I think a lot of people, including a lot of women, are attracted to the idea that there is this money out there and I could go out and raise the money. You're going to give up equity for that. And you have to understand they're going to deal with the investors if you do that. And, I think there's a much better understanding today of what that means than there would have been 20 years ago when we started Springboard. So all viable.
Thank you. You talked a lot in many of the different examples about culture and the importance of culture through this process. And we've seen definitely a shift because of COVID, because of all the diversity, the trends on building diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how that has impacted culture. Where do you see those shifts happening from an entrepreneur perspective, and as we continue to go down that path?
Well, I don't think we're ever going back to what was. I think that we have learned, like we say, we progressed 5 years and 5 months with regard to how we work, and that just as we're doing this, I might have, in a different period of time, be standing up in front of people in a room doing this talk. We're doing it virtually. We've all learned about that. There are great things about virtual. It helps us, you see, we have companies around the globe. It really helps us for having, more frequent connections, more people being able to connect because they don't have to fly to Tel Aviv, or they don't have to fly to, Hong Kong or whatever it is from wherever they are. There's a real value in it. However, I think people also very much miss the interaction of the whole body, not just the head. We're all just looking at our heads, or maybe our shoulders on our heads. We kind of miss the idea of really being together and sharing a lot of things. And the efficiency of doing it this way virtually is great. But what you do miss is sort of the socialization of being in person. And I think we all want to go back to that. But I think companies aren't going to go back to, everybody has to return to the office. Everybody has to be here at least 5 days a week. Nobody is talking about that. They've all learned the efficiency of doing this. They want to integrate that into what is going to happen. Now, for an entrepreneur, sure, it's more challenging to raise capital when you haven't actually personally met people. There's a lot of personal connection in it, whether people think there is or not. There is a lot of personal connection in it, and it's a little harder to develop. There's so much. Everybody could attend so many different seminars, so many different pitch sessions, so many. It's seemingly open, but harder to compete in it in some ways because of the lack of that personal integration of people's, the culture that you have. And I think that people recede somewhat to the culture they know. And so in terms of entrepreneurs and growing their businesses and so forth, if you're receding to the culture you knew, it's, got to go back to, in our case, more men getting funding than women because of their networks that have been going on for they were raised and born into them, and they went to school in them, and they, and women are 20 years behind, but we're making real progress now, as I tried to demonstrate with the success of the Springboard companies, that it's possible for us to change this culture. And women today, whether it's millennials or Gen Z or all these other, there's a different sensitivity to today that they're saying, we can do this and we're going to do it. And I like the positivity of that. And that is going to change. And I also think that working in the virtual environment, for those of us who are doing things that we can do that, I think it has opened the eyes of management in big companies as to the value different people in their organization bring. And I think it has really been a great impact on their knowledge of how people interact. Because a lot of times when you sit up there in the C-suite, you don't actually know as much about some things in your company as people in the middle ranks know who are doing it every day. And I think this is, cut down the barriers quite well. And I think it's going to be positive for a lot of people who haven't really had access to some of the resources, whether it's internal inside of the organization or external as an entrepreneur. So I'm hopeful and positive about the impact that'll have going forward.
Awesome. Well, we're heading to the last 5 minutes of this great conversation, Kate. Thank you so much. Any final thoughts, advice, recommendations?
Well, I think, what I would say to people here, hopefully, if you're an entrepreneur, go out and try it. There's nothing, there's nothing to stop you. If you really have a burning issue and something would never let you go, like it would never let me go, you've got to try it. Okay, if it works, fantastic. It'll take persistence. It's hard. If it doesn't, it's okay. It's kind of the mantra of Silicon Valley, actually. Failure is, part of the process that people go through to learn how to really do this. And as a mentor, an investor, an educator, you can put yourself. What I always like to tell people, and especially for women, is you really have to learn to love the sound of your own voice. You've got to speak up. You've got to be present. And you've got to be confident in what you say. People can challenge it, but don't let people overtalk you. Don't let people interrupt you. Learn to love the sound of your own voice and learn to listen as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kay. It was wonderful and so inspiring, especially right now as we head into this unknown. I really appreciate the time this morning, and we invite everybody to either review this talk again or to continue to visit us every month in our enrichment series webinars. Thank you so much, Kay, for being with us this morning. Let me take control back and okay. So a couple of announcements as we head into the end. Please get involved, sign up for updates, pngalums.com. Support the foundation, pngalumnifoundation.org, or partner with us at sponsor at pgalums.com. You can also volunteer, start, join a chapter, or share any other thoughts. You can send us an email at hello@pgalums.com. Also, you can access all of the recordings to our webinars, both on our YouTube page at pgalums.com or in our website, in our website or in our YouTube page a month after in our channel. Like I said, please feel free to reach out at any time in our email account. And I invite you to join us a month from now on June 8th with Ben O'Dorer, who's going to share with us how to continue to innovate in work and life after leading a Fortune 500 company. Thank you again so much, everyone, for being here this morning. And I wish you all the best in the rest of the day, wherever you are. Thank you so much, Kay. Goodbye.